Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's installment of TRU Snacks. My name is Steve Ronan, the host of today's webinar and the leader of Citrin Cooperman's consulting and outsourcing practices. Every Thursday at noon, we bring you snack-sized insights on a timely topic delivered by experts in the field. And in that interest, today we'll be discussing automating your finance function using accounting robots with Carlos Catalan from Citrin Cooperman and David Ditja and Andrew Gravel from Plena Data. A few administrative reminders before we start. We accept questions throughout the webinar, so please look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, locate that Q&A button, and please feel free to pop your questions in there as we go. Some we may answer during the course of today's discussion, and we will reserve time at the end to address the rest. Additionally, we'll be doing our traditional snack basket giveaway, where one lucky attendee from today will be randomly selected to receive a craft basket of snacks. We'll announce the winner at the end of today's session, and our marketing department will reach out for shipping information. In an effort to expand the series and bring you even more snack-sized insights, we are going to be rebranding from TRU Snacks to C-Suite Snacks in the coming weeks. So please look out for that change in your emails, your invites to these webinars, and on social media. And finally, if you're here because you found it on our website or one of our social media channels, I encourage you to sign up for our mailing list to receive an invite for our topics every week, which are new, dynamic, and ever-changing. So please also visit our TRU Snacks Content Hub on our website to see the decks and recordings from prior presentations. So thanks again for joining us today. We're pleased to have you with us. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Carlos Catalan for today's session. Carlos, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen, and hopefully you can see me right now. We can turn to the next slide real quick. We can go after introductions, but what, like Steve said, if you go back to one slide real quick for intros, if you go back, one of the things that we're doing today, we're very excited to talk about RPA. I am director of the Strategy Business Transformation Practice, and today, we're very excited to talk about this topic. It has come into a lot of our conversations with clients and prospects. So sharing our experience and what this is, why it's coming down to the middle market, and some of the examples. I think it's going to be really, really fun conversation to have today. Dave, I will turn that over to you to do quick introductions on your end.
Yeah, my name is David Ditja. Like Steve said, I'm one of the founders of this Plena Data company, where we started our own RPA platform. The purpose of this platform was to automate accounting processes using robots, and we have done so successfully across multiple industries, companies of all sizes. And the key advantage there being these robots are really quick to build and quick to deliver.
In today's session, also, we have another team member on Dave's team. That's Andrew. Andrew, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, thanks, Carlos. How's it going, everyone? I'm Andrew. I'm one of the account executives here at Plena Data. I've been with the company for about 8 months now, and I'm super excited to be able to present to you guys what we do here at Plena Data and show you how our kind of robots can help automate your processes.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. We have a very young team here. So, as you guys probably know, we're very excited. We're adopting this technology, and we're trying to really take this technology to you guys, so you guys can use this. Dave, we can go to the next slide and we can get started on this. So one of the things that we wanted to do here today with the audience in the next 20 minutes is that we wanted to start with the basics. What is robotic process automation? What is RPA? And what this really entails is that when people are saying robotic, it really comes down to a software, right? And the software today is Plena Data, right? Those are our partners. This is the guys that we're working with. And the software, what it does and the capabilities that it has, where people are really going after, is that it can mimic or behaviors that we use on our computers, right? Every day we open our computers, we check our Outlook, we check for emails, we open an Excel file, we copy, we run different reports, right? So this software can actually execute those activities, so those steps in there, right? Then the second piece of it is, as you kind of putting all those steps together, that becomes a process, a sequence of steps together, right? And that's where we come in and we develop for our clients is, defining what process we can apply using these software capabilities. And once you combine the process and combine the robotic or the software capabilities, then those two things together become automation. And that's where everybody is really going after in the middle market today. It's really defining and say, well, Carlos and team here, what processes can we actually identify that we can apply this technology to gain automation and increase our productivity, right? Dave, will you go to the next slide real quick? Then it becomes of like why RPA today, right? And there are three main characteristics of why middle market companies are using this software. One is the software costs and what I like to call like democratization of the technology has really come down significantly, right? We're talking about once you identify a process that we can automate, right, that cost has come down between $5,000 to maybe $10,000, obviously depending on the complexity of the process and the steps that we're trying to combine, right? So that has become very appealing to a lot of middle market companies to say, you know what, let's give this a try and be able to gain the benefits out of this technology. The second piece of it is that these software capabilities can also work with your existing systems, right? And when we say systems or applications, we're talking about, QuickBooks, we're talking about NetSuite, we're talking about Excel, right? I'm working with a client today that is using a UI factory as an ERP system, right? So anything that today as humans are able to gain access to, now the software, or what we like to call the bot, can actually go into the system and then execute all the steps that we tell the bot to do, right? And the third piece of it, and this is very key, is that once we identify the process for automation, the implementation is very quick and nimble, right? It takes about 3 to 6 weeks to be able to say, you know what, we identify the process. This is a manual process. It's always the same and repeatable. How quickly can we get this done? And then it takes really a few weeks to actually get this up and running. And now you have a process that you can automate and rely on going forward. I'll turn that over to Dave for the next slide.
Yeah. Andrew, before we dive into the specific processes, I want to quickly highlight the way you think about these robots is you can think about them, well, one way is like a macro on steroids, right? So you've got a piece of automation that can access multiple systems, do multiple steps, no matter how simple or complex those steps are. Another way to think about it is it's just like hiring a new employee. So you hire a new employee and you say, here's the following set of instructions to execute your job. These are your responsibilities, do step A, step B. When it comes to step C, if this happens, do this decision, or, make a flow chart of what the logic is. And then this robot is basically an employee that has a well-defined set of rules, but cannot make any subjective decisions. It can make very objective and logical decisions. With that, I'll kind of turn it over to Andrew. We'll go over some examples here in a couple of minutes about these robots performing various accounting operations.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Carlos. So I did want to point out, so essentially what our robots are doing is they're taking over the screen, the keyboard, and the mouse controls of your computer, and they're performing these processes from start to finish, just like humans. So anything that's presented on the screen, the robot will be able to read it and write it. From our experience, about 80% of the accounting cycle can be fully automated from start to finish. Like Dave mentioned, there is subjective work that is at times needed for a human to step in and assist the robot to complete the process. So a simple example of this would be the AP process. So we can build a robot that can monitor an email inbox as invoices come in from your vendors. The robot will be able to capture that invoice, read it, do all the data entry into your accounting system. And then a human would have to step in and approve the robot, and then approve the invoice, and then submit it for payment. So that would be roughly about the 80% that the robot can do, and then the 20% that the human would have to step in and complete. But as you can see on your screen here, there's various processes within accounting that we can automate from start to finish. The bank reconciliation process usually comes out to be about a 98 to 99% completion rate for the robot to do the whole process. You mind going to the next slide? We also do build what are called integration robots. So to simply put this, if you have two systems that just don't work with each other or talk to each other, we have a solution for this. So this robot would open up system A on one screen, open up system B on another screen. And essentially what this robot would need access to is just username and password. There's no API or backdoor entrance needed to get into these systems. No matter how old or how new they are, the robot can log in just like you would. Go to system A, read whatever's on the screen on system A, and then go to system B and transfer that information and write it into system B, causing a full fluent integration between these two systems. And we do want to point out these robots are system agnostic, meaning we can work with any system.
Amazing. So I'm going to go quickly through the next 4 slides because these are the examples we'll be showing. So in a second here, we'll look at examples of these robots running in action. But what we're going to be looking at are these 4 different processes. The first one will be reconciliation. And we pick these processes because these are the most common, time-consuming, repetitive processes that tend to generate the most ROI if a robot takes them over. So bank reconciliation, credit card reconciliation, any sort of balance sheet reconciliation, that's the first one. Accounts receivable, we see this is one of those processes which can be completely eliminated, all manual steps, except for calling the customer or trying to collect payments in case of delayed receivables. So it can do everything from creating an invoice, sending the invoice in PDF attachment, personalizing an email, sending it to the customer, sending reminders, applying cash payments. So if you have a lockbox where checks go in, or if you have ACH deposits or wires, you have to look up the deposit, look up what the invoice is open for that customer, and apply those payments. On the accounts payable side, like we mentioned, everything from capturing invoices from emails, reading the invoice data, keying in that information into your accounting system, comparing it against some internal records like POs or warehouse receipts to make sure the invoice you're paying out is actually correct. And then finally, entering the information for approval and payment. On the month-end close side, there's no specific process, but there's a couple of processes that stand out. The one is journal entries. So accrual journal entries, adjustment entries like deferred revenue, fixed asset depreciation, revenue recognition, ASC 606, so on and so forth. Financial reports, so building Excel files from various systems, and account reconciliation. So going through the month-end close checklist and having the robot do them one at a time can save significant amount of time. We see our clients go from a 5 to 6 day close to a less than a day close, and that's a drastic change. Lastly, building Excel reports typically is done once a month or once a week. But now that if you have a robot, you can say, okay, here's all the steps to get the data. Here's the steps to apply the business logic. That's lookups, macros, pivot tables, whatever the case might be. Do any sort of data cleanup and collation, and then format and present the output in Excel, Word, PowerPoint, PDF, depending on what format you want. The robot's going to plug in the numbers and the information and send it to you in an email, or have it ready for download in our portal. So we'll go over each of these examples and one at a time. So the first example we're looking at is a robot performing cash reconciliation. So the process is simply to log into a bank account, download a statement, then log into your accounting system, look up the transactions in the GL, and start to reconcile them. Everything you're seeing on the screen is done by a bot. So every click, every decision that's made, every data that's entered, it's all done by a bot. So what the robot is doing is it's looking at, oh, I see a $100 deposit, and then I see 5 $20 deposits. So I'm going to match them up because they happened on the same day. So it's got very intelligent rules baked in to say, look at all the permutations and combinations until you find the match and make the difference 0. And in terms of looking at dates and descriptions, you can keep adding more rules depending on how custom your requirements are. The robot itself comes with a default set of rules to do the most basic forms of reconciliation. But if you have something complex, like, look, I have foreign exchange rates, I have subledgers and entities, and I need to apply these special rules, no problem. You can have a robot, all that baked into it. We're going to go look over one more example because that goes really fast. As you can see, over 2,000 transactions are reconciled in less than 60 seconds. Here's the same process happening in a different system. You're going to see the robot perform multi-factor authentication. So not only can you log in using a username and a password, it's going to wait for a 6-digit code to appear in the text message. That's a phone number that the robot is monitoring. And then as soon as it comes in, plugs in the number, finishes the authentication, moves on to reconciling bank accounts. Now, you don't have to have multiple robots for each bank account or each subledger. Let's say you have multiple entities, or in this case, there's 85 plus bank accounts. It's simply going to iterate through them one at a time. You just have to provide any special rules necessary for specific accounts. So this way, your economics are really good. You don't have to build a new robot each time. You're just using one robot across a spectrum of your operations. Again, regardless of the type of transactions, regardless of the complexity of the transaction, or any processing fee, adjusting fees that are coming in, the bots can perform reconciliation, like we said, at a 98 to 99% completion rate. And the ones that don't reconcile, they will be flagged and reported as a difference to the human. So they can look into it. And usually it's because a check did not clear, or there was a typo or a duplicate transaction. So it's a good thing they didn't reconcile in the first place. All these robots we're looking at, just to be clear, they're all rule-based. What that means is there's no possibility of an error because everything is well-defined within a set of rules. There's no heuristics. The robot is not doing any guesswork. There's no like, oh, I see these 100 times, I'm gonna do it this way in the 101st time. It's very well-defined set of rules. The next example is AR. So we talked about creating and sending invoices. So in this case, you'll see an example of a robot that has to send out 4,000 invoices in a specific day. And each invoice has to be personalized based on what's been purchased, the line items that are put in. The email message has to be personalized to say, hey, Chad, your invoice is due on the 15th. Please pay using ACH or whatever payment mechanism there is. And then once the invoice is paid, like we said, cash application process or cash receipt process, which is looking at the deposits and applying them towards open invoices for customers, making accounting for special rules like credit memos and, overpayments or short payments or discounts and things of that nature. The next process, we look at AP. So over here, the robot has gone through an email and captured all the PDFs from the accounts payable email and said, okay, these are invoices that the vendor has sent us. So we're going to read the invoice and start keying in the information like the dates, the invoice number, the terms of the invoice. And then we can have some intelligent logic in there to say, look, if you see this in the line item description, plug in the GL code as the following. So you can have GL codes, selection process. You can look at the supplier name and determine the GL code. So not only are we entering the invoice, we're also coding them, and we're doing some internal lookups. So if you have a three-way match requirement, like look up a PO number and compare the line items, amounts, and quantities to make sure the invoice you're paying for is of the right amount. Similar process happening here in a legacy system. This is to show you don't have to have brand new systems. This is a really old software running in a legacy Windows machine, and the bot works just as seamlessly as it would in any new system. Now we have with respect to month-end close, like we said, we have balance sheet reconciliations, but we see a lot of journal entries, meaning part of the checklist is to go and make any accrual adjusting entries like deferred revenue, prepaid expenses. So here's an example of a prepaid expense journal entry getting made. Now what the bot is doing is it's going to your chart of accounts that are for prepaid expenses, sees any new transaction that comes in there and says, okay, I see a transaction for a software expense, and the rule tells me I need to divide this by 12 and accrue it over 12 months. So it's going to divide that number by 12, compile the journal entry, ask for your approval, and then actually key in the information into your accounting system. So some of these examples, we have to slow things down so you can see individual steps happening. But the robots are not limited to do things at any speed. They can go as fast as you like or as slow as you like, depending on how your systems work. Lastly, financial reports. We talked about Excel files, so anything from cash flow forecasting to income statement to any Excel file. And this doesn't even have to be in accounting. It can be outside of accounting too. But the idea is you may have to log into different systems, export the data, collate the data, do lookups and joins. So over here, the bot is filling in the information parameters, exporting the data. The data comes out in PDF format. It's going to look up all the numbers, key in that information into Excel. Now you can provide a template and say, this is what I want the output to look like, and this is where I want the output to be saved. So the robot's going to adhere to the template and comply with all those steps and email you the report. So once the bot is built, you have access to a portal that looks, very simple. You don't have to download the bot. You just have to go log into the portal and run it, or you can schedule the bot to run at any specific time. So those are a few examples. We'll go back to our deck now. And if you have any questions that are coming in, Steve, let us know, specific to the examples we showed.
Thanks, Dave. One of the things to notice here is that as Dave was explaining the technology, right? Obviously, within finance and accounting, we can identify, we can spot a lot of processes that are very manual, that they're always the same, they're repetitive, right? But what we believe in is that that's just really the first step in terms of how companies are adopting this technology, right? And I don't want the audience here today to think about that this is only applicable within the finance and accounting department. This also can be applicable across your organizations, right? So yes, I want to make sure you keep that in mind as you kind of really trying to understand how you can apply the technology and also how you identify processes for greater automation and productivity. In terms of next steps, some of the things that we're doing here is, and we have developed different solutions among different clients, right? Typically what we do is we have a rapid finance assessment that really what it does is within 2 to 3 weeks, we work with you and a client to identify what are those manual processes, right? How much time is your team spending on those areas? And we develop a business case to really identify the time savings that we're going after to develop an ROI, right? And really have a good discussion with the business owner and say, we really need this. Here's our hard dollars, the savings. How much is our investment that we need to make on acquiring or benefiting from this type of technology, right? The other two examples here that we have are very targeted to specific processes like bank reconciliations and accounts payables, as Dave was mentioning. We have multiple clients right now benefiting from these specific areas. And we have ways that it can give you those benefits after that. We typically, what we do is we have a scoping calls, right? And we say, you know what, Carlos, we know exactly what processes are manual and bank reconciliations and accounts payables. We're spending way too much time on that. Let's talk about that. Let's kind of really understand what the process looks like today. And we can actually jump into, instead of doing an assessment, we actually jump into an implementation. And then we have the Plena Data team today with us that really can help us, deliver those automation benefits after that. Anything else, Dave, that you would like to cover on this next steps?
No, yeah. I mean, the next steps are really calculating the ROI of, what processes you guys have that require immediate automation and what processes can wait, what processes either lead to more productivity of the accounting team as a whole, or, save you from hiring another person as you guys are growing. Looks like we're having a flood of questions come in, Steve, so I'll kind of turn it over to you.
Great, very cool stuff. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate the discussion. So let's start off, and just a reminder to everybody, the Q&A window at the bottom is where you can put your questions in. Let's start off just talking about the consistency of the processes a little bit. So I'm going to combine a couple of questions here, using AP as the example. If you have different vendor formats for something like an AP invoice, how do you distinguish like when you're going to need different automations or different bots? And how do those rules get entered and maintained through your platform to handle those variants?
Yeah, so AP is one of those processes where we use an additional what we call a machine learning algorithm to determine which format contains what information. So you may have multiple vendors and every vendor sends you a different type of PDF. So when the robot receives a PDF, it first goes through a lookup process where it says, okay, I have this format. Within this format, where can I find the invoice number? Where can I find the date? Where can I find the amount? And we use a service to determine that. And so then they have a repository of over 4 million variety of invoices, and it's maintained and hosted by Google. And so we look it up and we say, okay, now we know where to look it up, and now we can pull the information out. So that's what we call OCR and do that. As far as rules go, so we have a place both in the portal. This is a user-facing portal. People who are running the bots can add new rules and modify existing rules. But the initial rule implementation is done by our engineers on the back end. So we have a portal where the robots are developed, and we plug in all the rules in a flowchart format.
And Dave, to be clear, under your solution, are you guys maintaining those rules, or are the clients maintaining those rules?
So under our solution, we like to maintain those rules. We provide a way for the clients to also adjust those rules if they need to, or add new rules with a little bit of training. But we have a support staff here locally in the US of about 20 engineers that are available to help you with modifying those rules.
Great. What about physical documentation, physical invoices, physical contracts, anything like that? How do you guys handle, how does the tool handle those sorts of assets?
Yeah, so sometimes we have to be careful. There's physical documents that are handwritten. Unfortunately, we have to eliminate that from the process where the robots are involved. Physical documents that are digitized, meaning that have a print format to them, somebody would have to scan them and upload them either into a file system or Dropbox or an email. And once it's in a digital format, the bots can take it over from there.
And you guys like OCR those digital documents to abstract the data out of it? Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right, great. From an integration standpoint, how should people think about using a bot for integration as opposed to APIs?
Yeah, so integration is one of those very novel cases where we're totally breaking the norm of how integrations is traditionally done. Traditionally, there's an API or some sort of a backdoor entrance to a software system. You hook it up and look at the endpoints and monitor that. What we're saying is that's really complicated, a lot of engineering effort. Sometimes the endpoints are not available or they're just too hard to get around. So we're simply saying robot logs into a system, looks at the screen and says, okay, here's a report I can download, or here's in the screen I can read this information, which needs to go to the other system in question. And then we read that information, we log into the other system, and then we key that information in, whether in a form or upload it in an Excel file or some sort of a manual transaction, just like how if we asked a human to go and integrate two systems. Now, if you run it frequently enough, you can pretty much get a real-time integration, or you can batch it once a day.
Great. Okay. Terrific. We're right at time here, so there's a couple more questions that I think what we'll do is follow up with those folks offline. Following this webinar, everybody who attended will receive a recap with a link to the deck and a link to a recording of the webinar online, as well as the contact information for the presenters today. So keep an eye out for that email. Please feel free to reach out to anyone on the webinar today with questions, to set up a meeting to discuss your personal circumstance, or just to learn more about the area. We do these as education and are happy to further that education in the time after the webinar. The winner of our snack basket today will be Howard Reba. Howard, congratulations. Somebody will be reaching out to you to get shipping information. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining today. Please sign up for our mailing list. Please visit our content hub. We've got some really great sessions coming up. And especially as we get into the heart of the year, we think some of these topics are going to be particularly relevant for you. So next week is the 11th. We're going to be doing a session on state and local tax considerations for managing a remote workforce, particularly relevant for a lot of companies still with their COVID way of work. On the 18th, we'll follow that up with a roadmap to reopening. Your post-COVID workplace questions answered. We're going to be joined by David Lewis, nationally renowned speaker on topics of HR and talent, and the CEO of Operations Inc. We've got a lot of great webinars planned for between now and right now we're scheduling out into May. I'm sure a lot of the topics will be of interest to folks on this webinar. So please sign up for the mailing list. Make sure you get the invites. We look forward to seeing you on those future sessions. Thank you again for joining. I wish you a great rest of your week, a terrific weekend, And hopefully we'll see you back here next Thursday at noon for state and local tax next week. So thanks again. We'll talk soon. Have a good rest of your week.